Hi all, and welcome to the first in my summer series of Trails to Tasting, where we go out foraging and exploring the natural world around us, all in order to create some really delicious, delectable, highly nutritious, and useful cocktails or mocktails, depending on how you wanna do things. But today we are going to be creating something called a Rosey Rose, which is going to use rosé, obviously, and wild roses, which in this area we have multiflora rose, which is an invasive species. You can see it blooming right there. So let's take a look at how to identify the multiflora rose, a little bit of information about it, and how to harvest it. The flowers of the multiflora rose are usually a pale whitish to creamy yellow color and have brown or yellow centers. Here they're a little bit closed up for the morning, but that's okay. Still get a good look. As we inspect these flowers, we can further tell that they are, like all roses, have multiples of 5 petals with lots of reproductive structures in there. They are very floofy, very numerous in their reproductive structures. And we can see once the petals fall off, they leave a swollen base behind that becomes the rose hip later in the fall into the winter. Here you can see one of the flowers with its reproductive structure. You can really see how poofy and numerous they are. It's also a very small flower. Once they've been pollinated, they're going to turn kind of this beige brown colors compared to this vibrant yellow that attracts bees and other little flies to say, hey, I'm not pollinated yet, come to me, come to me. So this flower, I'm going to actually have to pick. Easy enough to do, we just go to the base of the flower here, right under that swollen portion, and pinch it off. In regards to leaf shape of the multiflora rose, we have these leaflets, typically of an odd number. So here we have what used to be 7. This would have been 7, so 1 here at the tip, with then pairs going down. Here we have a full leaflet. They also have some tiny little thorns on the back side. So as we harvest, we do want to be careful. The stems are very, very round and very cylindrical with these little thorns, just like if you have a garden rose at home. As we examine the multiflora rose, we can also identify it by some cool little petiole features. Petioles are the portions that connect the leaves or the flowers to the main stem. And here we can see that they are fringed. These petioles have some cool little fringes right at the base where the leaflets connect to the primary stem. These rose hips become the seeds. They are the fruit of the rose. And in this multiflora rose, they are invasive, so we want to harvest the flowers before they can ever get a chance to be pollinated and become these rose hips that can germinate elsewhere. So let's take a look at how to harvest the petals. For this cocktail, we're going to just use the flowering portions of our multiflora rose. So we will need a clean jar. Doesn't matter how big your jar is. When we create our rose petal simple syrup, we're just going to do things by ratio. So harvest as much as you want. Keep in mind, this is invasive, so harvesting literally as much as you can and as much as you can use will be beneficial in slowing and mitigating the spread of multiflora rose elsewhere. Now I'm just going to kind of gently tap here, and the petals should fall into my jar. If you have an area that has fresher flowers, you may find that you have to gently pick them off. Gather up your petals, and if you need to supplement some other types of roses, garden roses will also work. For a rose plant here, is a really great candidate for removal. I always suggest with invasive species like the multiflora rose that you remove it when you can from your yard or your community. Otherwise, they are going to spread like absolute crazy, which we don't really want because they outcompete native plants that provide really vital, important resources such as food, shelter, and nesting site for native birds and other pollinators. When we remove a multiflora rose, we want to be sure to dig out the entire root system. If any of the root system remains, the plant can come back, which kind of defeats the purpose and all of the work that you just did. Also, when we remove a plant, we have now just created a whole bunch of disturbed soil. So we always want to be ready to plant something in its place. Hopefully you're planting natives. So find out what plants are native to you, dig out the full root system of the multiflora rose, pop that in so that the multiflora rose or other invasives don't use that new disturbed soil that you just made. When we make our simple syrup, we can realize that we are helping the ecosystem out by slowing invasive species spread and gaining some really great benefits from the rose petals themselves. All right, we now have harvested all of our rose petals to make a simple syrup. If you haven't ever made one of these before, all it is the amount of plant matter or your rose petals. Cover it in a saucepan with water. Simmer that for 30 minutes or so. You may notice that the color changes a little bit. Then you're going to strain all of your plant matter out. Measure the amount of liquid that you have, and then add anywhere from a half to a 1-to-1 ratio of white sugar or honey. This is going to act as your sweetener as well as your thickening agent to make more of a syrup. But if you want more details on that, you can watch my DIY how to make a simple syrup video out of plant matter to get a little bit more details and some more clarification on that. But let's get started making our cocktail. If you wanted to use for this a Rosey Rose, we have our rosé, but if you wanted, you could use just a sparkling non-alcoholic drink. If you had some pink lemonade that you wanted for this, that would work too. The nice thing is you get a cool, beautiful pinkish color, which matches that little rosy vibe. But what we're going to do is measure out 1 ounce of our syrup. So this is just slightly over 1 ounce for our shot glass, so I didn't fill it up all the way. And then we're going to top off with our sparkling rosé. There we go. For the first session of Trails to Tasting for the summer, I wanted to start off with something easy and fun. Multiflora rose is everywhere. And this is a super simple cocktail to make. So cheers to the summer season. Let's give it a taste. Very pleasant, very cheery, very refreshing. And now the cool thing about rose is that it actually can help to cool the body down as a summer flower. So it helps that kind of cool vibe. It is also a very uplifting plant. So at the end of a stressful work week, your Friday, it's summer, Friday's finally here, sit back with one of these babies. They will uplift your mood, not just because alcohol, but because rose actually has the capabilities to stimulate mood boost and inhibit the hormones that make us so, great end of the week drink to celebrate the wonderful summer season that we are in. If you enjoyed this week's Trails to Tasting, you can stay tuned for next week. It'll be pretty exciting, using more flowers, yay. But you can also learn more about my foraging, other various tutorials like how to juice maybe fruits and berries that you find in the wild, how to create bitters, and all sorts of other awesome tutorials right here. You can also subscribe to stay tuned for all sorts of foraging goodies coming up to get you exploring the natural world this summer season.